it's easy, and it's unfortunate that I believe a lot of times when people come into these kind of problems in our institution, in our church, what I think happens is people withdraw. I'm not going to go there anymore. I don't like that preacher. I don't like how the board did this, or whatever. We withdraw. We withdraw our financial support. We withdraw our presence, our community engagement with the church. And I think there's a way around this. There's so many individuals in this church that have a deep commitment to it, and I see that, and I just look around here and I see faces, and I know the deep commitment, the huge amount of work and effort people have put into this institution, whether it's in governance, in volunteer work, in supporting each other, many different ways, financially. So it's not that we don't support each other as an institution, it's more that we don't have a method of outwardly, honestly saying, sometimes we're really pissed off at each other. Sometimes we don't trust each other. And sometimes we're fearful for this institution. And how are we going to communicate about that? What are our values about that? Do we have a mechanism for that? And I don't think we do. We haven't studied that. We haven't developed mores around that. So that need, that's where this James Luther Adams talked about that ongoing need to engage in self-criticism and renewal, that process of stopping and sitting back and being honest in our differences and being forthright with that and being respectful for the differences of others. It involves, conflict and conflict resolution, which involves deeply expressing ourselves and deeply listening to each other, even if we don't agree with each other. Developing an empathy for the opposite point of view that I might not like. It's an important process that I don't know that we haven't institutionalized. In preparing for the sermon, I did look at. I was thinking about churches and sects and cults, and because it seems to me this, what are we? I mean, we call ourselves a church, and we were a church, and I'll talk more about it. Max Weber was a sociologist I studied back in college. A lot of you probably did. And the process of understanding social systems, he thought studying churches was kind of a nice little microcosm, even though it's a big microcosm. And that he developed that differentiation between church, sect, and cult, and talked about how churches were institutions that identified pretty closely with the state. For sure, with the Catholic Church, you see that becomes the institutional church in various countries over history, Italy, France, Spain, and the Church of England, and institutionally identified with the institution of the state. We don't do that in the United States, but we do have a history where states become more, or certain churches become more identified with the power structure. And sects kind of move out of churches because they are questioning the power structure. They're questioning that identification. So there's that challenge. So it's interesting, if you look at Fountain Street, we were identified with the American Baptist Church, and then we moved out of that because we were questioning the system. Churches tend to recruit membership by birth, whereas sects tend to attract membership, not by birth, but just by attraction. Sects tend to have charismatic leaders, and sects tend to become churches or die. So sects tend to move towards the institutionalization or identifying with institutions of society or die, which creates another paradox. I know deep in my soul, I don't know of anybody in this church who wants to give up their freedom to question society and to not be totally identified at different levels with the values of our society. But that puts us out there in a pretty risky area, and I think that's why charismatic leaders are valuable at some point in the development of a sect, because they can hold together the institution while it hasn't developed its internal structure. So what I think is needed for an institution like this, and we are like the UUA in this manner, is that we develop a way to live together as what? Individualistic, rebellious individuals who value our individualism, who value our freedom, and who want to and need to work together in a supportive way. That's something different, and that's something of value. There's other organizations I know of who've done this. I know AA and Al-Anon are both institutions that have taken a lot of time to develop mores and values and traditions that address this very issue. How do you work as an individual freely with the support and supporting the institution? The UUA church does this through a covenanting process. I've heard about it some. I'm not deeply knowledgeable about it. I have my guesses about what it involves, and I know it's individual for each church. But as an institution, as a greater church, the UUA has spent a lot of time and energy and is a good resource to the individual churches within the UUA as they engage and take responsibility for that covenanting process. How are we going to be together? How are we going to deal with our individualism, our differences, our conflicts, our fears, our issues as an institution? And I think we at Fountain Street could really learn from that. And I have one other issue I want to bring up at this time, and that is that we as an institution, Fountain Street as an institution, also needs a community. I worry a lot about our lack of connectedness. There are great resources out there, one being the UUA, that is, we don't have to reinvent the wheel when we deal with everything as this institution. Whether it's social issues, how to relate with each other, searching for a minister, dealing with conflict. There is a great, rich body of knowledge out there. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's 100 wheels out there that we can pick from, and we can choose from, and we can study, and we can redo, but they're out there. I want to point out that this church, even though we like to think of ourselves as so individualistic and independent, when we've gone through times of crisis in the past, and there have been some, I know with transitions between ministers on more than one occasion, and a lot of us know about that, we've gone through major crises, and the UUA has been there for us. They've helped us out. They help us out in our ministerial churches. Our ministers, by and large, tend to be UUA ministers. They come in and they help us. And we say thank you, or if maybe we don't even say thank you. And then we go on our lovely business. It's not a reciprocal relationship. We, as independent individuals, are not taking responsibility, I feel, we as an independent church, I should say here, are not taking mutual responsibility and giving back to that which gives to us. And we're putting ourselves at risk, because when is the UUA going to say, that's enough? We're in a codependent relationship. with this institution because they give to us and we take. We barely say thank you and we go on. And I think that's unfortunate because we're not doing this in a conscious and an intentional manner. We could be doing it in a conscious and intentional manner. There's a lot more wrenches in that institution than we are taking advantage of. And we are putting ourselves at risk, like I say, because at what point are they going to say this is enough? Next crisis, you're on your own, baby. Which they have every right to do because we have never taken that responsibility. So that's my prophetic words for the day. I think there are ways, both as this individual institution and this individual institution in the world, that we can further and deepen our support that will enable us to have greater freedom. And that's worthy of support. So, thank you.